And this needs to go far and wide. Even now, was it 9 months after the original, it still applies. Whilst Libra itself has failed, the programme remains the same. And it affects all of us globally. It's not just an American problem. This is going to go global. That is their plan. And it's the classic totalitarian creep with many of the hidden agendas of how they work that has been covered in several of our shows. What starts off or appears as something good, presented as an alternative, pushed into the alt media for support by agents who work for these global elites. There have been many of these types of programs ran, but this by far encompasses them all, and its wide-ranging overarching effects will not be felt until it's all too late. This has to be nipped in the bud now, not in 2 weeks, months or years, now. This programme ran by the CIA, all of its subsidiaries, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, banking establishment, the Crown, venture capitalists who were all carefully selected and put into place. The UN and the World Bank, IBM and Silicon Valley globalists is designed to all wrap us all into a new matrix of control. It is Big Brother on steroids and makes Orwell's world look like a week off at the beach. They use the alt media to drive it, as the alt media people, largely outside of this show and Alan's, have not stepped out of the sidetracking narrative of pre-2014. We mentioned it in the Intel piece. Still talking of RVs, Saint Germain trusts, which never existed, birth certificates, PPPs, NESARA, GESARA, ET disclosure and saviour programs. Flat Earth, which also came out of the CIA. Bitcoin and BRICS are taking the old system down. Now they were created by the CIA and NSA. New Age drivel of how crystals, stones, rocks, violet flames, angels, macabres and singing Kumbaya is all going to save them. Or worse, a 2,000-year-old man is coming back from the dead to save them. All of it is nonsense to varying degrees. All of it is distractions 100%. But the problem is, it is what too many people want to hear, not what they need to hear. I'm going to call it like it is. If I lose members because I call it like it is, do I care? No. You have to learn the facts to understand there is a problem to then be able to provide the solution. And this is what disappoints me immensely about the alt media. There's only this group that's providing any solutions, while other show hosts are flip-flopping. All to keep their club. We're not individual clubs. We're we the people. Doesn't matter whether the name is THI, TPC, Off Planet Radio, Circle of White Light, OYM. Forget all them. We the people. Mass arrests, which leads to decentralisation. A key cornerstone of their message. And is also written on the Bitcoin itself. It is them, not us slashing the big government. Agencies, the military, social programs, social security, banks, mercenary groups and other private contractors and NGOs, with this system they won't need any of them. It is them trimming their fat. Imagine for a second they do trim all them industries. Well, that's a good thing, many will say, and the naive alt media. But what about all the job losses? Where will those people work to earn enough to put food on the table, never mind housing? Where is the new development in jobs going to come from to cover those losses? Decentralising does not mean repurposing, it means cutting everything into a smaller pot that they control. So at that time when we did this show originally, IBM were running the mortgage programs and the latest version of Hercules, Babylon, Byzantine and all the other fake god systems. And clearly it didn't work. At that time there were repeated attempts to leverage in-ground assets of the world to the Shanghai Exchange. That failed as well. And of course, since the original, we've changed the coding language. And this is why they're trying to create a new financial system using the same enslavement birth certificates. And guess what currency they will use? Why, the Facebook Libra, which failed also. The plan was to build them both and link the two to make the leverage against the birth certificates global. And that is the securities behind the Libra they are discussing. Not speculation, that was fact. Their RVs carried on even to this day. Failed that week, I did the original, and failed this week also. Various deadline days to take him out also failed. And so they launched this new program, Libra, which may change name, with IBM using a technology called Watson, which is the reverse engineering of a tech provided by the others, non-human, back in the 1950s. The SSP provided that to IBM. And to all those people who are still following those pair of sellout clowns called Wilcock and Corey Good, not to mention Jordan Sather, who's not only working with them two to dupe the public, he is the puppet boy of the guy in part behind all of this, Robert David Steele. So those of you who are supporting the SSP, known as the Secret Space Program, as some kind of saviours for humanity, are badly mistaken. Real badly mistaken. And again, for those new to our show, it was the SSP who fired the missile at Air Force One last year to take out President Trump. The same SSP that started the California fires and the large earthquakes in Alaska. It is them who have the two weapons and the capability of messing with our weather. So who, what, who, when and why? So why are they doing this? Well, for many years there has always been a trust that was for the benefit of humanity, supposedly, but was ran by ruling elites and off-world entities, all of which you can find out more details of in my must listen to section on our website, thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. Now, the leader of the trust, who is also the king of this planet, ran the whole show, and his name was Marduk. And his object was to collect all of the world's resources, and humans were classed as resources. In exchange to these globalist elites, he gave them pieces of paper with numbers on, which have no value. And he knew that. But the elite bloodline families didn't notice, or too stupid and drunk on excesses of life via materialistic expenditures. not to mention the inbreeding. And in exchange for those pieces of paper, he collected all the assets and deposited them into the trust, and by 2007 he owned everything on the planet. And I mean everything. And now that he had everything, he started going into the final phase of the programme, which was hinted at on the Georgia Guidestones, except he didn't tell the truth with that either, the elimination of humanity. And he pulled the plug on the trust money altogether, which led to the global financial collapse. And no matter which so-called financial expert or politician tells you that we have come out of it, they're lying. There are no financial experts. They report on the illusion front-based financial systems when the real trading and dealings were off-platform and not available to the public. Reality is we haven't come out of recession and won't until some more brave people step forward, join us and change the game with the support and backing with real assets of the trust. Their 2012 end of humanity deadline failed. Marduk gave them another 5 years to complete it. That failed. But the trust contract, which was hundreds if not thousands of years old, ran out in September of 2012. At this point, an unknown woman to us who worked with Marduk and Putin, the original Putin, the current one isn't, and Putin, who later became the Pindar. This woman, due to her financial background, was approached to take over the running of the trust, based solely on her DNA being as close to all other humans' DNA as possible, to then take over and run the trust on their behalf. And then she went into quite a steep learning curve of life to undertake, oblivious to many of the things that we covered in our shows and many others. Whilst looking through the trust, she found a large amount of discrepancies in the books, backdoors in the banks, multinational groups siphoning funds on every transaction was all found. Now, the trust originally contained 6,500 separate trusts, one of which was the Social Security, which was used for all kinds of nefarious purposes, and Kim rolled them all into one trust and originally called it the Manor World Holding Trust. That has since been changed due to the Rothschild's agent Jesper Ellerman and his Kingdom of Manor crew, and designated it to return all of it back to humanity in a fair way. Not for the so-called elites, royalty or fake bloodline families, but back to the people. It was those people and their thirst for wealth, greed and power that we nearly lost everything on this planet. The trust is to be dispersed when the clowns stop blocking it, for full-on humanitarian, developmental, infrastructure and new technology dispersal, of which several patents of them are contained and owned within the trust. In 2016, she contacted me to help her and I to work together, and I also started the foundation called the People's Club, and we've been working together on several projects since, not just the financial aspect either, but things way beyond that level. On the financial level, with Kim having identified several issues within the trust and also the entire banking system, we undertook to clean up the whole thing and essentially strip it bare and replace it with programs that were fair, transparent and clean to all. Except these clowns don't want that. We removed several thousand backdoor links, near 36,000, to all banks and every person's account, which unveiled organisations like the CIA, FBI, IRS, the UN, governments and various subsidiary departments, academic institutions, Silicon Valley, the military, all branches, and the SSP were all involved in it. All had access to your accounts. That all got stripped away, their access denied, and was all cleaned up. The original was a front side of banking which the public accesses, and a secret private backside access into every bank and every account, which these clowns controlled. Only they had access to. The same applies to Wall Street. There is a public trading and a private trading. Private is where all the real trades goes on, and that private trading platform is 4 to 7 seconds ahead of the public trade at all times. So they get in to make the big deals before the public or traders are aware. The backside, known as the black screens and the codes, was all stripped out, and access is only approved by the trustee, which is Kim. Only she now has the codes to use that banking system, so that cut that avenue off. The next clean-up was in every central and high street bank globally. They installed a mini bank called a clearance account, so all your checks, wires and transfers were all held deliberately in this side account, which they then leveraged off it on stock exchanges via rigged markets, and eventually they cleared your money after 3 to 7 days and sometimes longer. This is why you had to wait to clear checks. The reality is you don't have to wait. They impose that on you. A check is a live cashing the minute someone signs it. On the day we shut down the clearance accounts and transferred all of the money in there to the recipients, there was $180 billion in those clearance accounts. And that appears to be their holding figure. 180 billion of people's money held back per day. So these greed merchants could siphon off it. So now, like the back doors into banks and accounts, these clearance accounts was cleaned up and closed down. Then we dealt with the credit card issue, which is still ongoing, I might add, in some aspects. People want to know why credit card charges are so high for the holder and the shop owners. Because the Federal Reserve and the Pentagon and others in Langley were taking around 0.5% each of every credit card transaction. Then we had a new game to deal with, as several banking establishments tried to hack into the trust and steal it. This ended with us taking the measure to fry their servers attempting that, and that included a whole warship decked out with servers in the bay at Norfolk, Virginia, which is owned by the SSP. All of that got fried. Further attempts were done by NORAD servers, SSP servers out of Wright-Patterson, a new quantum system, they said. Also out of Wright-Patterson tried to hack into the quantum system that houses the trust. That lasted for 12 seconds before that was rendered useless also. Then we had a software problem in the banks and also the US Treasury Department, as Mr. Mnuchin is working for the global elites. Trump has fired him twice, and yet Mnuchin refuses to go, stating he works for the Rothschilds, not Mr. Trump or the American government. And as Rothschilds appointed him, only they can fire him, and this ladies and gentlemen, is how your government works. You all think Mr. Trump is in charge. Wrong. The software kept denying any transfers from the trust, except if it went to the governments, which they then stole. That was also blocked. They can't do that. They can't steal funds anymore from anywhere. Half of all Pentagon military budgets for every single year was stolen. Every single year, until we blocked that last year. Under the new banking system, you can trace every transaction, so we can see where the funds went into another account. And Kim is now ahead of every bank as its override controller. She takes the misplaced funds and puts them back into the trust. So we changed the language code of the whole banking system into a language they will not understand or hack. Binary coding became trinary in essence, and suddenly the banks, the military, agencies and what is known as Five Eyes all went blind. Oops. They could no longer access the platforms or see them anymore. We have done certain other things that will not be revealed as yet as operational currently, but as you can see, we have literally stripped away their control of finances and banking, denied them access to accounts, took back several offshore accounts that belong to the trust, stopped them stealing or leveraging in-ground resources, hello Anna von Reitz, and rendered them all inaccessible unless by approval from Kim, which you will not be given out to clown or rogue organisations who are hell-bent on giving us nothing. Essentially now these people have nothing, only the illusion of control, threats and intimidation. They can't and never were going to release an RV. They don't have control of the banks, gold or any other minerals, as they all belong to the trust. This then stops them from getting a resource and leveraging it 50 to 100 times with the Shanghai Exchange, which they have been doing for many years now. In the middle of all that, the IRS was stopped from sending all American income tax money to a Rothschild's bank in Switzerland, the home of this Libra venture. Cancelled the Federal Reserve licence, denied them access to print more money, blocking them from using or trading US dollars, and several other measures, all of which was relayed directly to Mr. Trump. The trust is the highest sovereign entity on the planet and also the highest security clearance. Kim is 41 security levels above Mr. Trump. And so on January the 27th in 2018, Kim, as the main sovereign on the planet, declared America, not the United States, as that's got nothing to do with America, sovereign. This essentially, when it's fully implemented, ends the Crown's control over America. It deletes the Federal Reserve and the IRS, neither of which are American companies. It restores the real Constitution and ends bar lawyers. So people will ask, why can't the trust get out the funds out to the project people? Because we are down to human level issues now, where before it was technical and software. The funds goes into the Treasury and Mnuchin denies it, or it goes to a bank and Mnuchin or Rothschild's group calls the bank and tells them not to pay out or deny the account exists, except the trust can see every account that exists. And at a time when we did this, as an example, Citibank was given funds, were placed in there, and they denied access to it. They paid heavily for that, as Kim pulled all the bonds back. So as you can see, they've had everything taken off them, denied access to funds that don't belong to them, had their siphoning and leveraging of funds or resources which again doesn't belong to them, and they are stuck with a new system that will not allow them to launder or transfer money to fake accounts, print out fake notes, or new notes with duplicate allocation numbers. They all got swiped by the trust also. And this is why the Rothschilds in particular, although they're not the only elite family to be doing this, are doing fire sales every few months now to keep afloat. To put it bluntly, they are effed. And to use a quote that came from a top official of the Federal Reserve last year in a meeting with the Treasury, quote, "You do realise we are fucked, don't you?" Unquote. So they were left with no option but to find another system, platform and mode of transferring that they control. And this Libra, or a derivative of it, is that program. Let's look what it says on the Bitcoin closely, shall we? A large B with 2 nodes on the top and 2 nodes on the bottom. And the B stands for Bitcoin, right? Look closely again. It is not a B, it is a 13. The 13 black nobility families, 13 covens, 13 parents who ran the covens, the 13 bloodline families, and the 13 colonies of America owned by the Crown. Oops. On the back is essentially a processing chip. I wonder what that symbolises. Above the B, or the 13, the 2 nodes represents the Twin Towers, or more pertinently, Joachim and Boaz. It is at the top and the bottom, as above, so below. Their symbolism, now that we are aware of it, gives them away. The British monetary pound sign, hashtag, euro and dollar signs are all very similar. So what is that symbolising? Well, during the 1800s and early 1900s, a British typewriter had the British pound sign on it. But an American typewriter did not have a dollar sign on theirs. So they used the hashtag sign to symbolise American money. In Britain, we have 2 descriptions for the word pound. One is monetary, the second is weight or mass. Today it's just LB. And in the past it was LB with a line across both letters near the top, going left to right, almost making the L in lowercase look almost like a T. Now the word pound derives from, you may be surprised to know, a Roman word. That word is Libra. The ancient Roman units of measurement were largely built on the Hellenic system, which in turn was built upon Egyptian and Mesopotamian influences. In other words, the cult of Ra and the Sumerian gods again. And as many of you have listened to From Russia with Love, you will all know too well. But the final battle of light and dark has now been declared, and it's up to us to fix it. We really are now in the final countdown.